Hi there, and welcome to Mendel Plays. This is the second episode of my All Achievements or Bust run. My main focus here is quality of life upgrades for my dupes, while I try to manage getting the Carnivore Achievement. The first major thing I wanted to do was upgrade the plumbing situation to use showers and toilets and sinks. In order to do that, I needed a place to sanitize germy water, which is why I'm digging into this chlorine area right here. I also wanted to start setting up some tidying, specifically of the ranch areas. Honestly, partially because I wanted to make it easier for me to see what was going on with the hatches, but also because I wanted to restrict the diet that my hatches were eating to only be the stuff in the critter feeder, because a lot of the stuff on the ground they can consume, and I wanted to hold on to that material. You saw back there that I also had the opportunity with the printing pod to get into the dupe, but I opted to hold off on that until I could get my incubator setup running and get a higher rate of production of meat and barbecue. I manage incubators through automation because once an egg is lullabied, then the power for the incubator doesn't need to stay on. So I set up cycle timers to ensure that the power is only running for a fraction of the cycle. Here I'm starting research for the water sieve so I can create a closed loop relating to my bathrooms. Once I set up the cycle timer for the incubators, that got me the next achievement, which was red light, green light. Basically activating automation. I'm still fine-tuning the exact timing that I want for the cycle timers for these incubators. When I first built this one, and then the subsequent two behind that, I started off with 9% cycle duration, starting every 10% of a cycle. And once I got done with the research on the water sieve, the next step was to add liquid containers, which is also necessary to sanitize germy water in a closed loop. And after picking up another dupe that was a quick learner, high in rocketry, and also bottomless stomach, I did a few minor upgrades, including adding another manual generator to deal with my increasing power needs, moving my pitcher pump to align with my ladders, and adding another incubator as my egg population was starting to grow. At this point, checking on Carnivore, I had gone about 20 cycles and only consumed about 6,500 kcal. But the last time I did this, things really ramped up when I set everything up the way that I needed to, which didn't happen until closer to cycle 65 or 70. I found a couple of more hatches roaming around that I could wrangle. As my incubator network expanded, I decided to raise their priority to a 7. This was just in case I had thrown any 6s into the mix I had forgotten about. I really wanted to prioritize my ranchers getting into those incubators. But also, once I set up my drowning chamber, I typically have my incubator set up at a priority 7 anyway. I also made a decision to reduce each ranch size down to 4. Time went by and I was able to finally clear out all the random debris that was occupying the ranch space, leaving only the hatches, the coal that they excrete. And after getting that done, I ended up getting another colony achievement. And this ended up being a pure accident because, if you remember, a while back, I ended up printing curative tablets, and one of my duplicates got sick and picked up one of those curative tablets for me to get the They Got Better colony achievement. Another quality of life upgrade is adding fire poles to make it easier for dupes to be able to travel, including below my water pool, where there was a lot of resources that I wanted to dig up. I had another printing pod opportunity and decided to print out pip eggs to be able to get quick meat for the Carnivore Achievement. Here you see me doing a trick to create a vacuum on the other side of this water lock because I wanted to keep my germy liquid sanitizing area purely chlorine. You do this by constructing blocks on the other side of the liquid lock in an enclosed space so that any gas has nowhere to go. And this deletes the gas so that when you deconstruct those blocks, then all that's left remaining is a vacuum. There's lots of different ways to sanitize germy liquid. I stole this method from a user on the clay forums. Again, I'll explain this once the actual construction is complete. Since I was well on my way in creating that closed loop system for sinks, toilets, and showers, I needed to carve out a space for it. I didn't realize until pretty late that one of my dupes had gotten trapped, so I had to build this quick ladder system to allow them to escape. Because once again, it is absolutely inevitable that one of your dupes will get trapped unless you are careful. As my construction of the washrooms was on its way, I got another printing pod choice and ended up choosing the dupe that had high decorating, high strength, and also nighttime bonuses. Since that was my 9th dupe, I also needed to build a new barracks for them, which I did before going back to coring out more below my water pool and gaining more resources. Around then, I noticed that there was a buried object that I could dig into, so I set up a pathway to discover which one that was. And as that was being done, I started to set up the piping and the water sieve that was needed to finish up the last pieces that I needed to make my washroom functional. The way that I sanitize germs that gets into the polluted water because of my washrooms goes something like this. You install 3 liquid containers in an environment full of chlorine, and you connect them together into a single chain. You create piping that ends with a liquid bridge that loops the polluted water through all 3 tanks. Because of priorities that are designed in liquid bridges, when polluted water comes from the washrooms, they take priority in the bridge and pushes an equal amount of polluted water out of the loop. And as new germy water comes in and then travels the entire chain, the germs eventually get destroyed by the chlorine. After doing a quick bed swap because of a snorer, I decided to automate the way I was doing with my oxygen diffusers. I was manually turning off and on my oxygen diffusers in an attempt to save power while still distributing more evenly across the base. To not have to keep track of that anymore, I decided to add in automation using cycle timers, setting each one to be active for 1/3 of a cycle. This is me further closing the loop of the eventually functional washroom. This last overflow segment pipe here is actually a mistake that I was able to fix before I actually made this whole thing active. Picked up another dupe that was high in ranching and also immune to food poisoning, figured the more the merrier, and I started to carve out space for a full-sized barracks. I'm building a storage container inside of the chlorine environment specifically for bleachstone, and you can see that over on the right-hand side that I actually discovered 2 geysers next to each other. Around this time, at cycle 34, was when I picked up my next achievement, which was to hatch a critter morph. This was hatches into sage hatches, which I then promptly killed off. Because I find sage hatches to be pretty unsustainable, I'd rather hold on to regular hatches or stone hatches if I'm going to be producing coal. Here I was taking a look at my breathability, and because it wasn't so great, I decided to change the timing for my oxygen diffusers. This meant that I wanted to have some overlap as to when my oxygen diffusers were going to be on, and because of that, I decided that I needed to upgrade my power grid so I could separate out different 1000 watt circuits by adding transformers. After creating 2 1000 watt grids of regular wire and a heavy watt wire to back the power generators, I decided I could reintroduce my research stations to advance even further on the research tree. With my closed loop plumbing system now pretty much in place, this allowed me to get my next achievement, which was to replace all of my outhouses and washrooms with toilets and sinks. With that, I started to expand my base reach and exploration, and I started to dig downward so I could get access to the polluted water down here and increase my overall liquid reserve, and also kill off these plug slugs for their meat. Here I was looking at a hatch that was just about to lay an egg and would not be able to lay another one, so I waited it out for that hatch to lay its egg, and then as soon as it did, then I killed it for its meat. I completed research for automated dispensers at this point, which is how you can get into infinite storage. The way that I build my infinite storage is to create a pit, throw automated dispensers on either side of it, have it set to sweep only, and have it grab all materials that don't off-gas and throw them into a single tile. I have this other automated dispenser going into my water pool to store things that do off-gas in addition to any ice. Now that I had that set up, it allowed me to deconstruct the storage containers that I had already built and take all the stored material and throw it into that infinite storage space. This is me correcting the error that I had made before with that overflow pipe. You want the overflow to go into the output of the sieve, not the input of the sieve. The reason that you need this is because when your dupes use the sinks, toilets, and showers, the amount of polluted water that comes out is slightly more than the amount of water that comes in. I was checking on Carnivore here and seeing that I had 65,000 kcal consumed with 61 cycles to remain. One of the things that you can do with your colony summary is take a look at the breakdown of how much kcal was generated and then also removed from the map. Because I can take a look at this on a cycle basis, then I can get a good sense of what my average kcal consumption is specifically for barbecue. And at this point, I think that I was still behind. I would have needed to have something closer to 12,000 kcal consumed per cycle in order to be able to make it by cycle 100. But again, at this point, I wasn't worried yet, as this ranching system had yet to be completely optimized. When I built out this large water pool, there was some water that got left behind, and I decided that I needed to shift that over and dump it, so I created a quick pump to move that liquid. I also put the finishing touches on this room that was being prepped specifically for Dreco farming. You'll notice that most of my doors on the left and the right side, I have a stack of 2 doors on top of each other as the room border. In this particular one, I used regular tile because I need to trap and contain hydrogen for Dreco farms to allow their scales to grow back after shearing. I ended up getting a Drecklet in the printing pod. I wasn't quite ready to deal with ranching, so I printed it out so that I could kill it in order to get its meat. I also made the decision to shift my Great Hall down by 1 level. I set some stuff over to build on the right-hand side to denote the maximum size that the Great Hall could potentially be, but also decided that because I only had 12 dupes, I could shortchange some of that for the time being and expand out if I added more dupes into the future. Exploring out that far revealed some more plug slugs, so I set to grabbing those to get more meat. You can see that that excess water area was now completely empty, so I took the liquid pump that I had built and dismantled it since it was no longer needed. As I knew that my dupes were going to be doing a little bit more labor over on the right-hand side, I decided to add another oxygen diffuser. And then as luck would have it, one of my printing pod options ended up being 12,000 kcal of barbecue, which I was not going to turn down, free meat. I started tweaking with the percentage time that my incubators were on because I found that the amount of time that I had it on was not quite enough to ensure that the dupes would go up to lullaby them. If the dupes are in the middle of another task and they didn't get to it until towards the end, then the egg could be not lullabied for an entire cycle. Eventually I got done research for insulated tiles, and that started me on the pathway of being able to deal with the geysers and with the vents that were slowly being revealed to me. Here you see me doing the initial setup with the cool slush geyser that's going to be very key to something larger that I build later on in the base. What is that, you might ask? Well, you're going to have to wait until the next episode to find out. Thanks so much for watching. Again, I hope that the cut and paste and overall narrative style of this series is helpful to you. I welcome any feedback or any suggestions or any questions that you might have in the comments. For the next couple of episodes, I am going to be tweaking the format a little bit since the next session that I did was a very long one that covered 3 or 4 different things happening at the same time. So I'm going to be summarizing not the overall time frame of that session, but the actual things I was doing within that session one at a time. Thanks again so much for watching. Hope you found this useful. Insert your standard like and subscribe ask here, and please always feel free to tell me your story because no matter who you are, I would definitely love to hear it.